back. My name is Rachel Branke, and this is the Real Biz Talk podcast. And I am joined today with Brock Johnson. He is going to, I think, blow your minds a little bit on a topic that I hear from you guys in our community on Facebook, which go jump and join in. But the idea of evolving in your business and growing and how scary that is, when to know what to do with it. So Brock, welcome. Let's start at the beginning. Like, how did you, let's start at the beginning and then we'll end where you're at now.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, Rachel. So excited to be here today. I got my start. Actually, I'm going to go back before I even got my real start in business and say that I was raised in an entrepreneurial family. So both my mom and dad have owned businesses their entire lives. So I've been very much around that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like we were sitting at the dinner table every night talking business strategies. But I was able to learn from them a lot growing up and just kind of watch what they were able to do and how they ran their businesses and conducted themselves. Mm-hmm. And then fast forward to my freshman year of college, I was a student athlete living across the country away from my family for the first time. And I wanted to be able to provide for myself. I wanted to create financial independence, and I wanted to be able to just enjoy things in life, like be able to go to the movies with my friends and put food on the shelves and, go out to eat when I wanted to. But as a student athlete, I didn't really have time for a traditional 9-to-5 job with the hours that I was playing as a football player and then, having school as well. Just didn't have the time for a traditional job. So I decided to start my own business. And at that time, I looked at the market and realized what I was good at and what problem existed in the world. And at that time, it was 2015, 2016, and Snapchat was all over the news. A lot of the way like TikTok was recently, how people were kind of scared about it. What's going on? It's this new app. Back in 2015, 2016, everyone was scared of Snapchat, right? It had disappearing messages. What's going on? What are people doing? What are these teens doing on Snapchat? And so I knew that I was in a unique position in that I knew how to use Snapchat. I knew what was going on Snapchat. And I had just taught my parents how to use it as a way to stay in touch with me across the country.
Let's have a time out here real quick. Do you mind talking about your parents? Because what you just said like blows my mind that you had to teach your mother how to use Snapchat. Do you mind us talking about that?
Sure. Yeah, we can go ahead. We can dive into that. You
want to share who your mom is?
Yeah, sure. So my mom is Shalene Johnson. Most people know her from the fitness industry. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what she's most well known for. Is she has a few best-selling fitness programs. If you ever turn on the TV at 2 a.m., you'll probably see her face selling exercise DVDs. But that's what she's most known for. But I think what she's best at is sales and marketing. And so she has like a marketing academy and she's built multiple businesses and they've been successful because of her knowledge of business and marketing. And I think that's actually why her fitness business was so successful.
Agreed. And she's so savvy on Instagram and social media. So did you teach her Instagram? I mean, I kind of just gave away what you're doing now, but did you teach her Instagram also?
I didn't teach her Instagram. We both learned about Instagram, I'd say at the same time. And we still to this day bounce ideas off each other. And we're constantly kind of going back and forth with, hey, did you hear about this? Hey, have you tried this out? But I will say she was on Instagram a few months before I was. So technically she knew about it before me and she definitely had way more followers than I did way before I did.
That's so funny. Well, it's just, I love kind of looping all around that you grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I didn't. My parents are very thrifty and savvy in their careers, but not entrepreneurial. So I always love to hear kind of the backstory. And you said it, we're not sitting around the table talking business stuff, but that's cool. Okay. So Snapchat is where we were. And so what did you create? You saw the need and you were good at, or you looked at the market to see what was the need was and what you were good at. You combined it to create
what was called Unwrapped Snap. My mom came up with the name. She's great at coming up with names. So Unwrapped Snap was my first course. And that's what it was. It was a $20 course that had a few different chapters of video lessons kind of explaining, hey, here's how you use Snapchat. Here's what teens are doing. Here's how to keep them safe on Snapchat. And I launched that in November of 2016. And that was my first official business. But within about 4 to 5 months after that launched, I started to realize that I had a lot of Snapchat followers. I had a lot of people who were joining this course and becoming customers because they followed me on Snapchat and they watched my daily Snapchat stories. And so I recognize now that I was using Snapchat for business, and I was using Snapchat stories and the marketing principles that people would apply to Facebook and Instagram, but I was doing it on Snapchat. And now I could teach all of these parents who now know how to use Snapchat to keep their kids safe. I can now teach them how they could build a business on Snapchat. So that's how it transitioned from Unwrapped Snap as a way to keep teens safe into Unwrapped Snap for business. And that was really what it was called. It was helping business owners grow on Snapchat.
So within that whole, what you just outlined of realizing that you could do not just the Unwrapped Snap for the safety, but for the business stuff, was there one specific moment where you're like, oh, light bulb, or what, did someone mention it to you? Like, what was the epiphany, I guess, of adding that on? And then I have a follow-up question after that.
Yeah, I don't know if there was necessarily like one epiphany light bulb moment. I think it was just a compounding effect of constantly getting messages from people asking me, how are you growing your business on Snapchat? One. Number two, recognizing that no one else was really talking about growing a business on Snapchat. But at that time, plenty of people were. So there was this thing that was going on that no one was really talking about. And then recognizing that teaching parents how to keep their teens safe, it wasn't like my calling. It wasn't what my heart was drawn to. It didn't fire me up. And so I think that's a great lesson for people to learn, is that sometimes when you get started, it's beneficial to get started in an area that you know you're going to see a quick win. You know you're going to see results. You know you're going to be able to make sales, even if it's not necessarily like what your heart is bound to do for the next 40 years, even if it's not your purpose or your calling. Get started, get the ball rolling, get some money flowing into your bank account, and then you can pivot and change and start to pursue what you think your passion or your heart is actually destined for.
I love that. I want to come back around to the question in a second, but I love that you mentioned that about the whole passion. And because I work one-on-one with business owners and I'm in different industries, and fitness is one. So that's kind of how I circled around to find you in a roundabout way. But I hear a lot of times from my coaching clients are like, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I just haven't found something I'm passionate about. So I don't really know. Do you have kind of like a mental walkthrough that someone could do to do exactly what you just mentioned? Find the quick win, but how do you also get motivated when you know that may not be your long-term offering or long-term passion?
I think that the motivation can come from the fact that you know that the quicker you get this thing to be successful, the quicker you can move on to the thing that you are actually passionate about. But there are gaps in the market, gaps that we can see. Hey, I'm really good at this thing. I have this skill. I've learned this ability. And no one else is teaching how to do this, or no one else is teaching it in the way that I do it. And so providing that, because that's really what entrepreneurship is. Entrepreneurship is being a paid problem solver. You're looking for the problems that people have, and then you are having them pay you to solve their problem, whether that's through coaching, through a course, through mentorship, through ebooks, whatever it may be, right? And so that's really what entrepreneurship is. And like we've been saying, it's oftentimes easiest to get started in an area where you're like, I know I can solve this problem. I know there's this big problem in the world. So I'm going to solve it for now. And then 2 years from now, I'm going to have a following. I'm going to have a reliable income. And then I'm going to be able to pivot and change and go into something that I know really drives me a lot more.
It's so funny. The other day, I'm always looking around for the unique things people are doing. And I don't know how many times I send it to my team. I'll take a screenshot of something. I'll go, there really is a niche for everything. And it was like a podcast guest group that I'm in. You know, you look around to see you can have as guest. And someone goes, oh, I can come. I have a podcast. And it was like about fertilizing yards. And I was like, there's literally a niche for everything out there. What's your opinion on getting really, really niche specific and dominating a niche first? Or, because I mean, I guess you kind of did with the Snapchat. You probably could even gotten even more targeted within that, maybe with avatar or the subject matter. It was pretty niche. But do you think that getting really, really specifically niche would be helpful, especially for a quick win?
Absolutely. It is everything if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur or just growing on social media. Having a niche is absolutely step one, square one. And the more niche down and specific you can be, the faster you will grow and the easier it will be. I hope that I'm an echo of what you say and what you preach, but like, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
I'm laughing, y'all. I didn't pay him to say this. He doesn't have a script. He's not reading it. I always tell them, get so niched, you're almost scared that it's going to fail. That's when you know that it's niche enough to be attractive and attract attention really quickly.
Absolutely. Like when I first started that Unwrapped Snap helping parents, it wasn't parents, it was moms. It was become a ninja mom. I was helping moms between the age of 35 and 45 learn how to use Snapchat to keep their teens safe. So it was like super hyper specific. And people might say, oh, well, what if there's a 34-year-old mom or a 46-year-old mom? They can still learn, they can still benefit from what I'm teaching. But as I got super specific, now I know who to talk to. Now I know what language to use. Now I know how to phrase and how to the pacing of my videos and how fast can I explain this tutorial. And so in doing that, it actually allows you to grow faster. And then as you grow, you can start to broaden out a little bit. You can start to extend your reach. You can start to talk about more diverse topics. But it starts with having a super specific niche. And personally, I define niche as two things. It's not just the topic. It's the focus, the subject, the topic that you're talking about, and it's the group of people you are specifically talking to, right? Because learning to use Snapchat is going to be very different for a 65-year-old versus a 15-year-old versus a 45-year-old, just completely different markets. So you have to get really specific with the demographics of your ideal avatar.
Yet mirroring everything that I've said to them, but I always like having other voices.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes it's helpful to hear it from someone else.
And I mean, we're both of us in practice. I mean, we're practicing what we preach. And so let me ask, is that Unwrapped Snap, is it still in existence? Because I'm the 38-year-old with a teenager that has Snapchat. I have no clue how to use it.
You know, with how many people ask me that, I should probably just flip the switches and turn it back on. I turned it off a few years ago and stopped updating it. And so because I stopped updating it, I felt like I shouldn't be selling it anymore. But a lot of the basics are still in there and a lot of the fundamentals are still in there. So maybe I should just flip that switch and turn it back on.
You could probably hire a teenager to come in and do the updates for you at this point.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So Unwrapped Snap went from the Snapchat stuff went from Unwrapped Snap with the education for safety on Snapchat, then to business owners. Where did your evolution go after that?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. I think a lot of businesses start out of desperation and seeing big shifts in the market. And so what happened to me was, again, I was a student athlete. And so after starting Unwrapped Snap and having some success, the NCAA was like, whoa, hold up here. What's going on? And they wanted to investigate me to make sure that boosters and donors for the universities weren't just like sending me money, basically in the disguise of a business. They wanted to make sure I was legit. All of my customers were real customers. They wanted to make sure that I wasn't using my likeness as a student athlete to advertise, because even though that's legal now, that wasn't legal
at the time,
4, 5, 6 years ago. So the NCAA put me under full investigation for about 6 months. I wasn't allowed to accept any new clients. Students wasn't really allowed to make any money. And then after that 6 months was over and they were like, okay, you're good to go. You can resume your business. There was this mass exodus from Snapchat. And a lot of people remember this. It was led by Kylie Jenner. It's always led by the Jenners or the Kardashians. So it was led by her. She leaves Snapchat and is like, I'm going to Instagram, because Instagram had just came out with Instagram stories. And around this time, I was also growing on Instagram. And I wasn't massive. I didn't have a huge following. I had maybe 20 to 30,000 followers on Instagram. And that was after years of posting. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to follow the market. I'm going to look around and realize that people are leaving Snapchat. I'm also going to realize that for the last 6 months, I haven't been growing a business. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to rebrand and relaunch Unwrapped Snap as Unwrapped Stories and focus on Instagram stories rather than on Snapchat.
Do you think if you hadn't had the investigation, it would have been scarier to make that jump?
I think so. I think so, because it probably would have been a larger following and a larger customer base over on Snapchat. Like it would have been a train that was still moving rather than a train that was still parked at the station. So yeah, I think it definitely would have been a scarier jump.
I like that you brought that up. And thank you. I mean, really, that's the point of this podcast, is really to get into the nitty gritty details that maybe not necessarily are apparent, that I try to always share about things in my life and failures that I've had for others to learn from. So I appreciate that you shared that. It's just interesting to me because I feel, and this is going to sound so cliche, but I'm sure you agree. I mean, you just spoke it, is that big life altering moments. And I imagine that was extremely stressful. I can't even imagine going through something like that. I'm an attorney and I don't want to be on the other end of any sort of investigation or legal type of stuff, like the stress. But oftentimes, what do they say? It's the darkest before the dawn, that whole cliche. But I think it's true. I just look back in my career, and the times when I've had the biggest burnout is when I've finally recognized I was in burnout, whether it's during pandemic trying to virtual teach 5 kids or something else going on, but getting my stuff together and really getting the train moving, or maybe switching platforms like this, Snapchat, Instagram, to really see a bigger success once you do it. But I think it's really hard when you're in that. I mean, you probably were thinking during the investigation, this is never going to end. I'm never going to be able to get back to business. Were you thinking of backup plans at that point?
I was, and it was actually during this time that I launched my first podcast, which at the time, it's got a super long name, but it was Social Media Money Makers, also no longer available. But that was the name of my first podcast. And it was launched during this time because it was like, well, I can't really sell anything. I can't promote anything. So I might as well add in this new channel to reach more people and serve people and educate people, and also to establish my own credibility. Because podcasts are really, really great for getting people to trust you and to respect you as an authority figure. So that's what I did during this meantime. But it was scary. It was frustrating. I was really angry. There was a lot of threatening that was, hey, I might have to forfeit all of the income that I had made. I might have to take all the money that I've made and return it to the customers, or donate it to a charity of the NCAA's choosing. It was weird. I had to write a bunch of letters, and thankfully the compliance department at my university was super helpful in getting me cleared and making sure the NCAA knew, like, hey, this is legit. This is something that he started before he was a student athlete. So luckily I was able to come through it, but it was definitely a scary and frustrating time.
I can't imagine. Well, and I think that this is a really good example for you guys watching or listening, that sharing this sort of stuff helps to humanize you to those that you're trying to serve. I mean, there's such great lessons, but you don't take that to say you have to go and share all the traumatizing or all the stressful things in your life. It's interesting for me, and I'm sure this happens to you. I'll be out in public randomly. I was sitting in Berlin a couple of months ago, and someone walked past and go, "Are you Rachel Brinke?" I was in a hotel, and I'm like, what? It's so weird. She's like, I listened to your podcast. And it's just so funny, though. I share that as a lesson to maybe to figure out like your comfort level of how much you really want to share about yourself. But it was on the other side of the world, and someone recognized me while I'm eating breakfast.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
It's so funny. So right now you're doing all the Instagram stuff. So Unwrapped Instagram still the name?
No. So that was available for a couple years, and then I transitioned into one-on-one coaching, and that continued to grow and grow, into the point that I was working 9 to 5, but with one-on-one coaching. And some days I would have no lunch. I would have my wife, now, who was my girlfriend at the time, she would like slide snacks and food under the door because I would have 3 minutes in between sessions to scarf down a meal. And it was draining, exhausting, and it wasn't scalable. I was sitting on, Zoom all day long, coaching people on a one-on-one basis. So I learned a lot, and I got to experience a lot, and I helped people in every single niche imaginable. You name it, I helped them. And it was really rewarding, but it was also really draining. And it was something that I knew wasn't going to be a long-term solution. And then the pandemic happened. So I moved back home, and I was living with my parents, and my mom and I were talking one day, and we're like, Instagram changes so frequently. Instagram is changing on a not even monthly, but a weekly or even daily basis sometimes. And so a course isn't good enough, because a course needs to be constantly updated. And if someone pays for it one time, are they getting lifetime access and they're going to constantly get updates? So it just didn't work. So we decided that we need to go with the membership model, so that people could pay either a monthly or an annual fee. And then we can constantly update them and do live trainings and update all of the lessons and tutorials. And so that's kind of the basis of how now, over 2 years ago, we started what's called the InstaClubHub. And that's what we do now. And that's where all of our Instagram trainings are.
I love that. I'm glad you brought that up about the one-to-one. I absolutely love and have passion for teaching, and one-to-one, incredibly love it, but it doesn't really fit in the lifestyle that I have, right? Yeah. And I always talk to my audience. The very first episode of this podcast actually had a different name at the time. Episode 1, you guys go all the way back. It's called Fill the Rocks First. And so You talked about your time is like a vase. It's finite. And you take the rocks, which are the most important things to you, you put that in the vase first, and then the sand is all the everything else you need to do. So really the rocks are going to be like life stuff that I want to do with my kids, training, competing with Team USA, that sort of thing. And so for me, we just super limited my one-to-ones. We made it premium, and we give really good behind the scenes support. So not just Zoom time, but it helps my team to also be able to help with giving varying opinions and help to take off some of that load. Because like you, when I was doing mostly one-to-ones, like you said, it's not scalable. And I love it, but there's a limit. And I think that was one of the burnout time moments that I had. I was just like, I love teaching this way, but I just can't.
Yeah, same. I echo everything you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you find, and I've kind of shifted this opinion over the years, do you find that having people in like the InstaClubHub community style helps their learning a bit better as opposed to one-to-one?
I think so, because I think the ability to get to like talk to other people, learn from their examples and their experiences, and then also hear their questions, right? It's like being in a classroom. You're going to learn a lot more. And there's a reason why, in the university setting, you go to the classroom to learn. And then if you have individual questions, you can go to office hours or you can email the professor. But if it was just one-on-one, there's so much knowledge that other people can bring, questions that they have, examples that they can share, that just really aids in that overall experience.
As you were talking, I was just thinking about, I was in my own business program last year as a student or a couple of years ago. And it wasn't really anything novel that I was being taught by the coaches, but it was listening to the questions that other people had that would trigger something for me. And then I would end up in 4 days of falling down a hole of researching and strategizing that. And so when people ask, well, was that program valuable for you? They're probably meaning the modules, the videos, and not there wasn't value. I've just been doing business so long. The best value for me was the community aspect of hearing that. And what I love about that too, I think that helps us when we have group style or community style type programs. It helps us to improve the product quicker for you all because we're hearing 10 times the amount of questions versus one.
Yeah. You're getting basically data. You can look at trends, right? It's not just, oh, hey, this one person had this question, or hey, I had 3 one-on-one calls today and all of those people had a question about this specific thing on Instagram. And so you think, oh, everyone has this question, when in reality, it was just those 3 one-on-one calls in that day, versus you have a membership with a couple thousand students in it, and they're all asking about a certain topic. You can see trends a lot better when you have a larger sample size.
Where do you think you're going to go after Instagram?
I have no idea. I used to be a big whiteboard in the room, set goals for the next 5 years and plan things out, but nothing in my life has gone according to plan. And I'm so thankful that it hasn't. So I've stopped thinking about where will I be in 5 years. I'll continue to grow and adapt. I love marketing. I love making content. So I'm not sure where I'll be 5 years from now or where I'll be after Instagram, but I promise you it won't be Instagram for the rest of my life, because just like everything's changed so far, I'm sure that will change as well.
It's funny because I am a little bit older than you. And I started on Facebook because that was really the only social media that we had. We had just gotten rid of, oh my goodness, I can't remember what the name of it is now. Tom created it. Everyone jokes about Tom coming back now that Elon's taken over. Anyways, y'all will now write in and tell me what it was. But Facebook was the only thing. And I saw for a bit that Facebook pages, once they introduced advertising, algorithm plummeted, but I've noticed in the last year it's starting to come back. And so I almost wonder if we won't see a rebound for some of these platforms. Would you, because if someone had asked me a year ago, do you want to ditch Facebook? I probably would have said, for the most part, yes, except for my communities, the pages were dead. Was like, whatever. But it's kind of rebounding a bit for engagement for me, at least. Maybe I'm just doing something new. But do you see Instagram taking a lull and coming back? Or what do you think would drive the changes there?
Yeah, so I think that there definitely could be a lull and a comeback for Instagram. And there is a comeback definitely for Facebook pages. And I think the reason for that is that Facebook pages allow niche communities to have a sense of belonging. And they really operate in a way that's unique to pretty much every other social network. Most other social media channels exist in a one-to-many style. And hey, here's my YouTube video. All of you guys can watch it. Hey, here's my tweet. Everyone can look at it. Here's my Instagram reel. Everyone can look at it. But a Facebook page or a Facebook group can allow people to really gather around a central topic and all join in on the conversation. And of course, Facebook's a much larger platform than something like Discord or something else that allows, these community conversations. But yeah, I think Instagram as well is going to it already is experiencing a lull. And it is experiencing a dip in engagement. And it's actually not Instagram necessarily that is experiencing this lull or this dip necessarily, but it's the users who are. And it's weird because it's kind of, the opposite ends of this teetering spectrum. More people are posting on Instagram now than ever before. More people are creating content on Instagram now than ever before. And so the overall amount of content and videos and interactions on Instagram has actually increased. But because there's more fish in the sea and there's more competition, the individual engagement has gone down. But I do think that Instagram is here to stay, at least in the near term, because Instagram has some real strengths that other social media platforms, namely TikTok and YouTube Shorts, that they don't really have. And so until those platforms can emulate what Instagram has done, namely with the direct messages features, it's likely that Instagram is going to stick around and even make another push in the next few years.
So are you on some Instagram creator panel? Do you have an ear at Instagram is what I'm getting at, because we need clickable links in our posts.
I know, we definitely do. And I do talk to Instagram. I actually, over the last year, I've been really fortunate to build a really strong relationship with them. Almost a year ago today was my first time ever meeting with Instagram. And I remember I cried the first time I got an email from Instagram staff. I was like, oh my gosh, like no one ever gets to talk to Instagram, and they want to talk to me, and they want to talk about trends and forecasting. And now a year later, I've talked to Instagram staff in some department, at least on a weekly basis.
Cool.
But I think the next step that we haven't gotten to yet, I actually have it on my to-do list right now, is to reach out to Instagram and basically set up a panel where we can vent our problems and ask for new features, so that it's not just them guessing and their software engineers coming up with features, but it's actually driven by us entrepreneurs and creators and what we want, such as clickable links in posts.
Well, and also, I mean, having the shop feature is great for physical products, but when it comes to having digital, we're kind of SOL. And I mean, I don't know the numbers on it, but I would imagine digital and content, digital sales and content creators probably outperform or outnumber physical products.
Yeah. I don't know the exact data on that, but I absolutely agree.
Yeah. By the way, when it was MySpace. You probably never even
Yep. I was never on MySpace, but I'm very well aware of MySpace.
I miss we got to custom color code it and have autoplay music. It was the days, but it was nothing compared to the engine that Facebook provided and how all these platforms have come. Cool. So I love seeing the evolution of this. I mean, one of the questions that I had from the very beginning, and I didn't really get to ask it, just because you seem so confident in making these pivoting and, and the changes. But at one point, like, are you really ever scared to do it and lose what you've done? Or do you go in with the mindset of this isn't forever?
Yeah, I think I always go in with the mindset of this isn't forever. And I also love the early days. I love the early days when your views are low and your engagement's low. Like, for years, I've been trying to get started on YouTube. I got started a little bit in 2019, and then I fell off the wagon, and I wasn't very consistent. So I got restarted this year, and I'm being super consistent now. And I just hit 1,000 subscribers like 2 days ago, and I'm so fired up about that. Like, I'm thrilled. I'm like, hey, this video got 600 views, and I'm ecstatic about it. And then I go back to my Instagram, and I'm about to cross 600,000 followers. And so the dichotomy there is hilarious. And so on Instagram, if my video doesn't get 100,000 views, I'm bummed. I'm like, oh, for my standards, that's below average. I'm disappointed. It probably wasn't a very good piece of content. But over on YouTube, it's the early days. I'm like, if I get 1,000 views on a video, I'm like juiced. And so I love the early days. I love pivoting and relearning a platform. It's exciting for me.
I love that you said that, because I often will sit back and think, 15, 20 years ago when I first got into this, I just couldn't wait to be where I'm at now. But I look back nostalgic. I'm like, oh my goodness, all the lessons I was learning and the little wins. I remember the first time that I really saw sales for my digital contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting on the floor of our townhouse and just refreshing PayPal, because that's the only thing I had at the time, and just watching the sales. And I was like, oh my God, I can actually do this. And I still get excited when we're looking at KPIs and numbers now, but there's nothing like that in the beginning. So if you guys are watching or listening and you're in the beginning, document it and enjoy it. Because I wish I really had like journaled more of those moments, because that's really one of the only ones I can remember. And I love thinking about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to kind of bring this full circle, that feeling that you just described, hitting refresh on PayPal, I can say the exact same thing I experienced. And so for everyone watching, it's a really fueling and motivating feeling. It's really energizing to see like, hey, I actually sold something. Even if you sold it for $3, it's like, wow, I created something and someone now purchased it. And so when we were talking about the very beginning, you don't have to start necessarily with what you're most passionate about and what your life purpose is. If you just get started and then you see, hey, this is possible for me. Hey, I am making sales online. Holy crap, I created this thing in 10 minutes. It's not even something that I'm like super passionate about, but I'm now making sales and helping people. It's rewarding. It's fueling. And yeah, and definitely, I also agree that document that, share those wins, and journal it for yourself, because it's fun to look back on and remember those feelings.
I really wish I had more of a diary or journal of it, and even just like photos of the different things so that I can make a montage now for no one else, just myself, but definitely to be proud of the work, and the other side of that is, you're working hard and you're not making sales. There's lessons that come out of that too. Am I not niche enough? Where's my messaging off? And so, in the moment it sucks, but it definitely, because I've grown how many brands. I had one that flopped, and I had people in a membership and it just wasn't going the way I wanted it to. Admittedly, I didn't really probably put as much time and effort into it as I should have, and I closed it. And to me, that was a failure, and I don't mind talking about it because I also recognize what was the mistake. I knew what to do. I just didn't implement it. I almost got complacent and just expected people to show up.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what's next on the horizon for you?
Well, now that I'm married, my wife and I, we're starting to build our brand together and our brands, plural, together. So it's really exciting to get to work with her. We're planning potential masterminds and retreats in the near future. And so it's really great to get to partner with my partner a little bit and start to build this business together now.
That's fun. Well, Brock, thank you so much. There's a lot of information here. And, we didn't even script out. I mean, kind of gave you some questions. The organicness of this really is hit on probably the top things that I feel like the audience needs to hear, especially this time of year. For you guys, we're rounding into a new year. And so you'll be hearing this right on the cusp of coming into 2023. I think it's a really good thing. Go back through and listen to this again. We'll also put the show notes at rachelbreaky.com/podcast. You can find all of that there, but definitely dig in, because the whole evolution, what Brock's talked about, good little tidbits on here, stuff that people have to pay thousands of dollars from mentors to learn about. And so you guys have it all. You have it real, unfiltered. And don't forget to jump into the Facebook group community. We will have a thread specific to this episode so that we all can talk, share what we like, share our takeaways, and maybe you guys could share some of your experiences of what you've gone through in business to help others as well. So until next time, I will see you guys on the web. Thank you.